day for discrete math, we worked with check digits on barcodes, right? We wanted to figure out how to calculate check digits because the purpose of a check digit on a barcode was to actually see if the barcode worked, which is something that's very important to companies and stores because barcodes are what we use to actually scan products, and companies use that to be able to track their products. If the barcode doesn't work, they have serious problems. So they have a check digit, that number at the end of the barcode, which was used to be able to figure out if the barcode works. What we're working with today is we're going to be working with check digits, but not on barcodes. Today we're going to be working with check digits on bank checks. Check digits on bank checks. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at a check. Checks that your parents get from getting paid or paying other people out. Again, you've all seen checks at some point in your life, right? It's just a piece of paper that usually has a name up here, right? Usually we'll say like paid to the order here. It'll have a dollar amount here, usually, 107, whatever. It'll have a line here that says the quantity. It'll have the date, right, where it would be 1/8/21. And then there's a bunch of stuff down here, right? There's also a line here where you would actually sign your name. But then the most important thing, which most people never pay attention to, there's a number here. And I'll even use this one already to start. There's usually a number down here. 902 421, right? And again, I will write it bigger once we start working on it, so don't worry about that. Usually down here, there's one number, there's another number, but since the check is that big, I can't fit all the numbers that are there. The first number that's usually here, why that's so important, is that number that they have on that check, that first number, that's something that's called a routing number. And why that routing number is so important is that routing number basically tracks the check. If another bank gets this check, that number tells them what bank it's coming from and that the check is actually official. Because if you guys ever cash a check or use a check, if you take it to the bank, they'll only give you guys cash if you have enough cash in your bank account to cover that. Basically saying if you're gonna go cash a check for $50, they don't know that this check is good yet. They need to make sure that you have at least $50 in your bank account just to cover them in case that there's a problem with that check. What they're doing in the next 2 or 3 days, usually up to 3 days, what they're doing with this check during those first 3 days is that they're running this information. They're checking the routing number. They're doing all of this to make sure that that check is good and that the account it's coming from has enough funds in it to be able to pay that out, right? That's the importance of a routing number. The routing number actually tells us where the check is coming from, and the banks are actually able to track a check and the bank that it's coming from. So this number is extremely important because now people think of barcodes and all that. All right, there's a mistake, whatever. But now when you're talking about checks, you're actually talking about pure cash in hand. So if we're making mistakes with cash in hand, we can't have that. So the way that they do that is they have this routing number that tells them everything and where it's coming from and all that. But more importantly, if you have this routing number, you have to guarantee that there's no mistake, right? So I'm gonna write this a little bigger just for you guys to see, because in that routing number, there is a check digit too. So if we have that number 075 902 421 421, sorry. This is our routing number, right? And I'm missing a number, 075 902 421, I'm sorry. So when we have our routing number, the number that came from here, this number that tracks what bank it's coming from and all of that, they have a check digit, just like we worked with on a UPC, that lets them see whether this entire number is correct or not. And that check digit, again, it's that number that's at the end, right? This last number always, it's called our check digit. Just like the other day, the check digit was the last number on the barcode. The last number that's on this routing number is called the check digit because they use that number to be able to see if the routing number is right, which now in this case is extremely important, because if there's any mistake in this routing number, nobody knows where the check's coming from. That's a big problem, which means that people don't get paid, you may lose money and all of that if they're not getting their money in the end. So the way that they use this, and I'm going to show you the algorithm, the pattern that we use, is they figure out a pattern with all these numbers, and if it matches with this, we know that it's right? If the pattern comes out and it doesn't match that, we know that there's a serious problem, right? So what we're going to be working with today is we're going to be calculating this check digit to show you what they actually do to make sure that these routing numbers are working, right? And so I'm going to use that number again, right? Because I want you guys to see how it's actually done. And it's a little bit more complicated than what we did the other day with the UPC because it's a longer pattern, but it's fewer numbers to work with, so that's a good thing. So we have 075 902 421, right? And again, we know that that last number is our check digit. We're going to want to end up seeing if this routing number is correct, right? And the way that we're going to check it is we're going to check it to see if this check digit is correct. Okay? We're going to see if that check digit is correct. The way that we do this, and this is where it becomes a lot more complicated. So while we're going through this pattern, again, you don't use the check digit. The check digit is what we want to check, right? So this is the pattern. The first number, always multiply by 3. The second number, you always multiply by 7. The third number, multiply by 1. Again, that's the pattern that they use to be able to check these routing numbers, right? So it's always multiply by 3, multiply by 7, multiply by 1. You go in order. Then go back to the starting pattern. Multiply by 3, multiply by 7, multiply by 1. Repeat the pattern, multiply by 3, and then last number here, multiply by 7. We don't get to the 1 because the 1 will be represented there, but again, we're not trying to actually come up with that number, we're trying to check that it works, right? So forget it's almost there. So again, pattern always starts with the first number, multiply by 3, multiply by 7, multiply by 1, 3, 7, 1, 3, 7. And the reason we stop at 7, we run out of numbers, right? So we're going to do all this now to check to make sure that that number actually works out, right? And so, just like we did last time, we're going to multiply them and then add them up. First one, 0 times 3 is 0. Right? We did that one. 7 times 7 is 49. We did that one. 5 times 1 is 5. Did that one. 9 times 3 is 27. Did that one. 0 times 7, 0. Did that one. 2 times 1, 2. Did that. 4 times 3 is 12. We did that. 2 times 7, 14. We did that. Right? So we went through all the numbers and we just multiplied them, right? 0 times 3, 0. 7 times 7, 49. 5 times 1, 5. 9 times 3, 27. 0 times 7, 0. 2 times 1, 2. 4 times 3, 12. 2 times 7, 14. And again, it's always this pattern. Whenever we're checking bank checks and rounding numbers, it's always times 3, times 7, times 1. Times 3, times 7, times 1. Times 3, times 7, right? And now once you get all this, we're going to add them up, right? So let's add up these numbers. 0 plus 49 is 49. 49 plus 5 is 54. 54 plus 27 is going to give us 81. 81 plus 0 is 81. 81 plus 2 is 83. 83 plus 12 is 95. 95 plus 14 is equal to 109. Right? So we added up all those numbers. We got 109. And now it's the same thing we did last time for barcodes. We want to work with our tenths number, right? We want to figure out what's the next tenths. We know that 109 plus something is going to give us, after 100 comes 110, right? If we were using 83, after 80s would come 90s. So 109 plus what gives us 110? And that what is 1? 109 plus 1 equals 110. 1, 1. That's how we know that it's right. The fact that this algorithm, when we use it, the number comes out to be the same as the check digit tells us that this entire routing number is correct. If this number was different than that, we know that there's a mistake. That's how they actually calculate the check digits on a routing number. Again, let's try another one, just so you can actually see it. Again, it's less work in the fact that we're actually adding up fewer numbers, but the pattern is more complicated than the last one. So let's say we have a routing number right now, 044 07 0723 2. So 044 072 32. And again, I got to make sure that this is actually right because that's the point. So right now, I gave you a routing number, but I left out the check digit. We actually want to figure out what the check digit's going to be. That's what's missing right now. I want to figure out what this check digit's going to be. Because before we checked it, now I actually want you guys to try to calculate it, right? So we have everything we need. We just now need to figure out what the check digit's going to be. So follow the same pattern. Start with the first number, times 3, times 7, times 1, times 3, times 7, times 1, times 3, and times 7, right? It's always the same pattern, 371, 371, 37. Now from this, let's actually figure out what our numbers are going to be, right? We know that 0 times 3 is 0. We know that 4 times 7 is 28. We know that 4 times 1 is 4. We know that 0 times 3 is 0. We know that 7 times 7 is 49. We know that 2 times 1 is 2. We know that 3 times 3 is 9. And we know that 2 times 7 is 14. So just like we did before, let's add everything up, right? We know that 0 plus 28 is 28. We know that 28 plus 4 is 32. 32 plus 0 is 32. 32 plus 49 is going to give us 81 again. 81 plus 2 is going to give us 83. 83 plus 9 is going to give us 92. 92 plus 14 is going to give us 106, right? And again, coincidentally, the next closest number, we have 106 plus something. After the hundreds come 110. So now the question is, 106 plus what gives us 10? We know that 106 plus 4. If we add up 106 and 4 gives us 110. So we know that our check digit would have to end up being 4, right? You know that this check digit, the last number in that routing number, for this to be correct, would have to be a 4. Again, that's how you figure them out, guys. And again, if you needed extra practice, just always know, again, the pattern's always the same, but let's say that we wanted to figure out what check digits are. It's just analyzing it, right? If the sum is, let's say, 82, we would want to know 82 plus what to give us. After the 80s comes the 90s, right? So 82 plus 8 would give us 90. If we had, let's say, 51 plus what, we would go with, after the 50s comes 60, because it's always the next tenths number, right? And we know that 51 plus 9 would give us 60. This 8 here, this 9 here, those would be our check digits, guys. And again, always realize, especially with banks, the check digits are important because it lets us know whether there's a mistake with the routing number. And if there are mistakes with routing number, that's how money gets lost. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Take care.